But the things we don't want to be good at too, we're also practicing, right? Anything that we're doing, anything we're investing our attention and energy into, even if we do it mindlessly, that is a practice as well. So if you take everything within that context, then all of a sudden it seems like, well, I'm practicing a few things that I want on purpose, but a bunch of things I don't without thought or care.
Yeah. What do you think are the things that we practice that we don't even realize we're practicing that are not serving us?
Well, each person will have a different answer for that, but whatever it is, you already know, right? It's like something that there's always a little voice that's going, I'm not sure this is the best thing for us, right? But by and large, I would say something like just doom scrolling or mindlessly, kind of tinkering around in screen mode, where we're not really present to within our bodies or to the people around us, the world around us. Um, I think so much of our work as people is attention based. It's like, where is my attention going? What is it focused on? Where, because where our attention goes, our energy flows, right? We kind of become the thing that we put our attention on. Everyone knows what it's like to be caught in thought for a while and then realize you were thinking. In that moment, the identity that we hold shifts from essentially being thought to being present and aware of something. So that's kind of the thing that's happening all the time, all day long, is we're getting caught up in something and then we're returning home to ourselves. So the more we can center ourselves within the moment, the more creativity and flow and opportunity exists for us.
Yeah. Talk to me about flow state. Because as I'm listening to this, the thing that I always go back and forth, Shaun, is like being present in a lot of ways, I feel like is an ideal. And that in itself can almost be like inducing, like a spiral inducing to be able to, I'm not being present. And then you're trying to focus on being present, but all you can think about is actually focusing on trying to be present. And as I'm listening to you talking about like you're thinking, and then you realize you're thinking at that moment you're present. And it almost seems like that when you're actually present, you're not even aware of actually you being present. Like you don't even have you only realize it almost in retrospect, like, whoa, man, I was there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there are like the thing that always comes to mind is like sports, when people play like out of their mind, and what that means is totally in their body. Like they're not thinking. Um, Bruce Lee used to say, like, I don't hit, it hits. Like his body would do the thing because you couldn't think fast enough to make a move. You just practice something. It's like the path that's carved by thought is later blocked by it. Like we have to focus intentionally on learning something new, because it's very difficult to load in new information, right? But once we have the basics down, the fundamentals down, we've done it so many times that we could do it without thinking, then doing it without thinking is advantageous, right? We've loaded it into our kind of nervous system and um, our second brain, I guess. So there's like the thinking fast and slow kind of centers, right? So when someone does like a lights out performance and they feel, like whatever, the basket is 10 times the size, or, they can just hit any pass or whatever, that comes from just dropping all uh, instruction and expectation and just sitting in their experience and allowing something to happen through them, through all of the practice that they've put in. An incredible performance becomes available.
So how do you drop those pretenses? I mean, I think that's the thing, because I think that when we do something, especially anything, I think often of consequence is usually something that someone else has the ability to like see the results of, right? Your physique, right? How you eat, how you move, how you sleep, like the how you parent, right? There's always these follow-on effects, and so I think that in my mind, I have to imagine that the reason why you're in instruction is that you are trying to do it right.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, sure. But right and wrong only live in the mind. There's no such thing as right and wrong in nature, right? Like a frog could choke out an eagle. Nature doesn't care. But things happen. And so we set up our structures, right? With sports, it's all variable change. The ball goes across the line or through the hoop. The crowd gets angry and excited, whatever. Like one half is excited, one half's upset. But all of those things come from focusing on a particular outcome. But the thing that allows that outcome is all of the many inputs, all of the hidden practice, all of the love and sweat and tears that go into creating the possibility for a particular outcome to occur. We tend to get over indexed on those outcomes, on the thing that puts a W or an L in the column as the result. But you can win a game and have lost it at the same time, right? Based on how you showed up as a player or as a person.
I love your framing: love, sweat, and tears. And I think that those are actually real foundations, because those aren't like logical, those are actually experienced, right? You experience love, you experience sweat, and you experience tears. So when I think about the idea of life and practicing, number one, I'd love to understand your construct of how does someone take something so infinite and actually build practice around it. I know that's a big one, but I'd be curious to how you do that. And let's just start there.
Yeah. Is there something that comes to mind for you?
Oh, great question. Yeah, well, you know what I think it is? It's about, there's like who we show up for everyone, and then who we actually show up for the people who matter most. And I think about the people, like how we show up in the world for the other 98% of people is not always how we show up for those who like matter most for us. And I think that's probably true across, I think if everyone's telling the truth, how you show up for your partner is not the same as how you show up as a leader in your organization, or a facilitator, or a presenter at the front of the room, or as a coach, right? It's I'd be curious to from your perspective of why, but I think that, like, how do I practice that?
Yeah, for sure. As you were speaking, this quote came to mind from this guy called Baltasar Gracian. He's a ancient wise dude, and he basically said, "No one knows us completely, but we're known completely by everyone." So, like, each context you just mentioned holds a slice of your being, of the way that you show up in the world, right? You can be a coach, a parent, a partner, a friend, son, brother, whatever. And so each of those contexts provides an opportunity for you to apply yourself to the moment in some significant way. And so you are the only one who sees all of those versions of yourself show up, right? And the one who looks in the mirror and is proud or upset about however you performed in any moment. But ultimately, the thing that is behind the way that we perform in any of our roles is presence, is your essence, your essential nature. And what that is a mystery, man. It's beyond definition. But we try to define it in all these little ways, right? We could say, I am this person with this name. I have these friends and family. This is my job title. But none of that could ever contain the essence of our being. It's just a way to label and understand it. It's like, if you look at a palm tree, you can say that's a palm tree. But if you drop those words, palm tree, and you just look at it, you have no idea what that thing is. How is it building itself out of dirt and light and water? It's a mystery, but the mind likes to label things. And so that's kind of the deal, right? Is like, how do we show up within a particular context, understand the frame, decide what success looks like, and give it our best.
Yeah. Do you think we label things because we're trying to control it, control the outcome, control.
Yeah. Control. The mind is trying to control at all times. So it's labeling, judging, predicting. It's trying to help us survive, to do its job of helping us survive. But now that we've moved well beyond, needing to like outrun tigers or whatever most of the time, hopefully, it's a little miscalibrated for our current reality.
It almost seems like, Shaun, the new tiger is ourselves.
Yeah, and all of the internalized shame, expectations, responsibilities that have come from the external world in some way.
Yeah. I want to unpack a little bit that I think this is the inner world. A lot of times people talk like self-development, development, awareness, and those are all like really great buzzwords, but I think that the inner game is the one that you don't get a statement on. You don't get an ROI on. You don't get a grade sheet on. Although I will say your relationships and the quality of them might be a leading indicator. You don't you don't get lauded. There are no Academy Awards for like the play that's happening. There are no there are no editors except for yourself in terms of the narratives that are being underwritten, or that you are underwriting on yourself. And I'd love to have a little conversation around that whole mechanism, that whole engine that runs that, right? Because it seems like to me, our external our external presence in circumstance is actually the natural outcome of everything that's happening internally. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the way we show up in the world, it's like it's coming from within. The energy that we put out there. Sometimes we can, I like to say we'll often outsource something that can only be insourced. We're looking to the external world for a validation that can't really land, can't be given, because what can be given can be taken away, right? But sourcing is something different. If you find something within yourself and you bring it forward, no one can take it away from you because it's coming from you. You are the source of your own well-being. So, um, looking around at all of that, at the way that we show up in the world, and then judge ourselves or allow others to judge us, or whatever, those those things, they'll fall back into silence if you let yourself just sit with them. It's like Alan Watts says, you can't iron the ripples out of water. You have to let it settle on its own. you know
That's so
so
good.
yeah, so like giving yourself a chance to start from uh being in touch with your own internal experience, and then building upward and outward from there, provides a lot more opportunity for flow and creativity, and self-expression and authenticity that goes beyond whatever norms we're trying to fit ourselves into, whatever the box or the label or the right or wrong is. Gives us a different way to show up that maybe can shake loose some of those constraints that are ultimately just cultural. Like if we were born in a different place and time, we would be having all different conversations with different mental models to work from. But this is what we've got here and now, so we're doing our best with what we have.
Shaun, can you give some examples of where, like in your own life, where you've actually were externally looking for the validation when you needed to actually source that internally? And I think of the follow-on to that is, when did you realize? Because I'm guessing you just didn't come out of the womb and you're like, hey, practice everything book, here I come, right? And I find that most people who have had wisdom, it's because they've hit the branches on the way down. They have run directly into the walls and have the bruises to show for it. So could you give some examples of that?
Absolutely. I think one of my greatest challenges comes from, well, it was revealed to me through the Enneagram, which I ran into in 2014 over in Australia. But my particular personality style, we can talk about that a little bit more in a bit. But my style, kind of the challenge of it is like being willing to speak up, to assert myself directly and face the conflict that's required for harmony to exist. I'm very peace oriented, right? I want everyone to get along. I want things to go well. But that often would prevent me from speaking my mind or heart or my truth in a moment where that would have really served me, even if it would create conflict and other people would have to deal with that. Um, what I found is, in those moments when I had the chance to speak up but I didn't, I internalized both anger and shame. Anger at myself for not having articulated something, and shame for once again having let myself down. So abandoning myself in some way. Um, and so I can give you big examples of that or small examples of that, but ultimately the challenge is the same. It's like a fractal. Like every opportunity I have to either do that or not do that, I'm earning self-respect or losing self-respect. I'm getting more courageous or letting fear win, right? So it's, I see that as more of like a kind of like a basic proposition or like a gambit of our personalities that presents us with the same kind of challenge.
There you go. Another chess term, gambit. Well, can you give maybe one of yeah, either would be great, because I think that we often think that it's like it's this the big things is when, we're faced with these sort of, these existential sort of moments. But I love that you were like, it's not just big, but it's also the small things. And I think it'd be really great for the audience for them to be able to recognize in themselves. Um, if you'd be willing to share.
For sure. Well, on the smaller side, where it just kind of like it's little nits that kind of build up over time. It's any of the moments where someone did something that didn't work or said something that hurt my feelings or something, and I just kind of like shrugged it off. And then in my internal experience, I'm ruminating on it. I'm coming up with the perfect comeback. Everyone's familiar with that kind of a moment. Um, and so that what I learned is like if I let those things go for too long, they kind of build up until they reach a breaking point, and then I'll eventually kind of explode and be like, and then here comes all the things I've been holding on to, all at once. Um, so I learned in little ways, if I feel that little twist in my gut, I'm like, ooh, that doesn't work. Um, I need to start to take a pause and ask for time. Usually it takes me time to process things. So I'll say, hey, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I need to come back to that later, and then put myself on the hook to come back and say, hey, when you said that, it made me feel this kind of way or whatever. What I'd like to see in the future is this. And all those moments, obviously, they come with working through a lot of resistance, which is like admitting that something didn't work for me, then hearing myself talk about it to everyone but that person, telling my friends, partner, whatever. And then going, okay, I am going to say something. I get into the presence of that person. All of a sudden, all my courage goes away. And I'm like, oh, you know what? It's not that big of a deal. It's not really worth bringing up right now. It's been too long. And if I get through that, then I actually say the thing. And then half the time I'll go, but don't worry about it. It's no big deal. I don't even care. So like on the little end, just being willing to move through all those gates of resistance of like, acknowledge this is important, say it to the person who needs to hear it, leave the tension out there so that they are responsible for making change, not me. And then allow myself to load that whole experience into my nervous system of going, I can do something that feels awkward in order to get to something that feels peaceful. So that's like, I know nondescript. I'm not telling you one exact experience, but that's on the smaller side.
No, before you get to the big, what I love about that, because everything you just said there, like if you're a person who's listening to us and it doesn't resonate with you, I'm sorry, but you're not. You're either living in a basement all alone. But I think that I hit me was we have all these little micro blasts of these things that are happening like so many times a day. Especially if you're interacting with people, you're interacting with customers, interacting with your kids, your family, your spouse, in terms of your team, that you have all these little micro moments that, and going back to your sort of like practice everything, like these are these little mini little sessions of like, boom, boom, boom.
Totally. And each, like a difficult person, which we all know, and usually in the world of work, we're forced to continue to interact with them, whether we like it or not. They are either the bane of your existence or just an infinite opportunity to practice.
And I find that if you just give people the benefit of the doubt, I think a lot of people, they don't want to be the source of irritation. And the fact is that probably most people have never actually had a real honest conversation, and not an honest conversation, but from a place of empathy and how to actually be beyond. I don't know. I mean, you were like the head of like learning and development for Gooder, right? Like this incredibly fast growing company. I mean, so how does someone approach that, whether it's in themselves, it's someone at work, or quite frankly, maybe potentially not at work, but at home?
Hmm. Hmm. For sure. So you're saying approach like a difficult person or a
Yeah,
difficult.
difficult person. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, I think for the most part, people want to believe that others are good. Really, what they want to believe is that others are like them. So if you're an caring, empathetic person, you're going to project that onto the world and assume that others are caring and empathetic as well. Um, and most of the time that works, maybe 4 times out of 5, but something like 1 in 5 people are like high on the narcissism scale, or have some bit of psychopathy or sociopathy. Yeah, it's pretty high. So for sure. So there are people that do want to sow chaos and do enjoy drama and will not. They do understand empathy, but they only use it to transact and get what they're looking for. They don't integrate it as like, oh, I understand that I made that person feel badly and that makes me feel bad. They're like, well, I got what I wanted, so that worked.
Like win for me.
Yeah, right. So um that has to be addressed, and it's important to acknowledge when you're in a situation that is like untenable or unwinnable from the like um human exchange perspective. If there's givers and takers, and I think there's like matchers, there's like those are the like 3 ways we could show up. They say givers need limits because takers don't have any. So we have to realize what are the dynamics of the situation that we're in, and is this person challenging because I just don't understand what they're motivated by, where they're coming from, or their communication style, or are they truly just like an energy vampire and they're trying to steal my power and it's working, and I need to change the environment.
That's interesting. Yeah, can you talk to the big examples, the large examples?
Oh, for sure. Well, when we miss any opportunity, when I've missed an opportunity in my life, like if I had, advice for my 20-year-old self, it's like buy Bitcoin whenever that gets invented. And then probably something like they tell you with psychedelics, trust, let go, be open, something like that. Right. But like whenever I've missed an opportunity to better my situation, or um, like I said, for me to communicate something that's important to me, to face conflict in order to arrive at fairness. Conflict is a path to fairness, is actually a path to harmony. I'm not sure that there can be either one without it. But um, like when I spent many years building up a business, a creative agency, and I got myself in a position to, well, actually, I should say, I found that I built the business that I wanted, the life that I wanted. Everything on paper looked great, but I was going into work like with mud in my shoes. Like it was like a slog to get there. I'm standing in the beautiful office that looks like I work inside a Dwell magazine, and I just can't wait to leave. I was like mentally fast forwarding myself through every day, just thinking, man, this is no way to live. Like I'm waking up and I'm imagining like getting back to bed. Like I just want to be back where I'm starting, which is that's no way to live, man. So even though everything on paper was great, just for whatever reason, my inner compass was like pointing me out the door. I was like, okay, um, I helped create a consultancy that is excellent at helping people sell things on the internet, but I just can't be made to care about helping anyone sell anything on the internet anymore. And once I realized that, I was like, okay, I just need to change my situation. I need to, shake it up, get out of here, go do something new. And the plan that I had for whatever reason was like, what if I just sold everything, got into a airstream and bought a truck and just traveled around the country, like just a full reset. Um, so what would have been great to help that would be like a little bit of money, right? built up a successful business. Let's sell it for what it's worth and get out on the road and, do my best. But I just didn't, I chose to more or less walk away from it. And when I had completed that process, I found all these parts of me wake up and go, why didn't you do something to give yourself a little more fuel, runway, security? Like you just left the thing that you built. So even though I was free and even though I was surrounded by the most beautiful parts of America, I was trapped in my mind, just ruminating on, regretting, not having pushed a little harder to create a little more um, fairness in a situation that, ultimately I decided to walk away from. It was all my choice. But my choices and my tolerance for conflict were kind of one and the same there. So that one took me a few years to unwind from, as I'm not materially experiencing any part of that business. I'm in a camper, I'm in the Everglades or the Grand Tetons. I'm seeing the most beautiful sunsets and sunrises I've ever seen in my life. The only thing I have to do that day is laundry. I'm like dealing with myself. So that was like losing an identity, a part of myself, a feeling of being the kind of person who has these things and does this kind of work and has a network of whatever. And that turned into what ultimately I discovered was grief. It was a grief for a loss of a part of myself and for the part of me that didn't show up in the way that my future self wanted me to have. And that is the same. You can see that that's the same challenge, right? In the little ways when I know that I could say something that would be assertive or direct and I choose to leave it and I suffer a little bit on the inside, but it's fine because whatever. Um, when I need to show up in a bigger moment where I'm like, hey, we've built this together. This is what I want to see happen here. And I'm willing to go through what it takes to get that. That would produce something more ideal, right? But I put this in the book because, man, I've spent a lot of time in the mental torture chamber of rumination and regret, and I just don't want to go in there anymore. I just can't handle it. I'm like, I'm done with it. So what I put in there is regret always assumes things would have worked out better if they worked out differently. Practice knows this was the only way to grow. So regret assumes, practice knows. So if I give myself the freedom of understanding I had to learn that lesson, I had to go into that place in order to be able to stand firmly and confidently in conflict in the future at greater or lesser stakes, but really just to show up for myself instead of doing the thing that I'm the only one who can abandon myself, right? And choosing to stop doing that and just show up and speak up and do something new so that I can get something new.
What I love is you said, I'm the only one that can abandon myself. What a line. You know, what I have found throughout my entrepreneurial life is that you get what you pay for. Meaning that I find that when I write checks, I literally write checks, that somehow it's like God, universe says, okay, you're ready for it, even if I don't even know I'm ready for it. Then there are checks, invoices that are written to me by life that I go, I guess I'm gonna have to write this check. And just so the audience knows, like when they're saying like, oh, hey, we just walked away, like when this creative agency, like what was the check that you had to write basically to not take, like just a high level idea, like so the audience understands, like when you're talking about ruminating, it wasn't like, oh, you know, poor Shaun, just like, built this up and it's like, yeah, it's pretty, but like, what are we talking about here?
You mean like what did it cost me to not uh, stand in conflict for a little while? It cost me years of my own peace and self-respect.
Yeah, but how much did it actually, like, how much money did you leave on the table?
Oh, like literally hundreds of thousands of dollars or?
Yeah, yeah, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
Yeah.
yeah, so just so the audience knows, this wasn't like, oh, it just like left. I mean, this was like for a lot of people, like life savings,
Oh,
like type
yeah,
money.
absolutely. I mean, it would have been life-changing money. It'd be life-changing to me now, So yeah, it is like, um, it's something that I think, well, two things. My parents divorced when I was 12, and when my dad when they separated, my dad gave my mom everything. He just was like, here you go, here's the retirement account, here's the house, here's whatever. So the model that I had for leaving a partnership was you give everything away and walk away. Um, he also, at one point in his career, put us all into a camper and we traveled around the country for a year. I would think I was 9, I turned 10 on that trip. So it took me a while to see, but I was retreading my own version of a path that I was shown, right? When you don't know what to do in your career, leave everything behind and travel. When you want to walk away from a partnership, just walk away and take nothing with you. That's how you get free.
Wow. At what point did that hit you? In the Everglades, Tetons?
Somewhere, yeah. I think I was in Sedona, so that was a big long clockwise trip from Portland around the country, which is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. By the way, Sedona, Arizona is a work of art. Um, just sitting there realizing, um, you we're always trying to do something impossible, which is to make something impermanent permanent, or to like achieve some final state, but there isn't a final state for anything. And as I was kind of thinking through that, I was thinking, well, what am I doing here? Oh, I'm doing what I was shown is the answer to a difficult question. But I'm doing it in my own way, of course. But still, yeah, I was carrying the hiking stick that my dad found in Ilwaco, Washington. Yeah, when I was 9, I took it with me and filled the whole thing up with medallions the rest of the way. Like literally, the torch was passed.
That is incredible. Well, that's incredible. And when you were gone, how long were you gone? I mean, was this like a hey, just do a great circle of the United States, or was this like, are we talking like 3,000, 5,000 miles, or what are we talking about
Oh
here?
yeah, it was gonna be for a year, but it ended up being about 3 years and 73,000 miles.
73,000 miles. That's incredible.
I know, a lot of back and forth, up, down, and all around. But America is huge. If you've never tried to drive across it.
That is, Shaun, it's interesting. In the beginning, someone hears that story, and it's a story about how you gave up that money. One narrative could be like how you got screwed out of that money and how that person's integrity. Another story could be about how the fact is like how your like dad like laid down a roadmap that quite frankly, just put you on a path, to like experience the same potential type of heartache. But when I think about this, how much would people pay to be able to experience Americana, humanity, in 73,000 miles of thinking time? I mean, think about that. Like how much would people pay?
That's a great question. I don't know. It seems pretty ideal. And I'll tell you, if things aren't right within your internal structure, if your instrument is out of tune, the whole song is out of tune. So that to me, that was like a healing and emotional wound that I caused myself, basically. And being willing to take accountability for and responsibility for all of my choices. What you just said is true. I could tell the story in one way that makes me sound like a genius, like a super successful business person who just, took off into the woods. I could give you the detail. Like we were, or one of Oregon's top 20 fastest growing companies 3 years in a row, like gotten cover of the business page in the paper, had all these big clients, like all this stuff is going perfectly. And then I sold my shares and took off into the wilderness and traveled around for 3 years. Or I can be like, yeah, it did all these things. I built all this up. I took nothing from it. I traveled around regretting my decisions and beating myself up, and really putting myself back in a conference room when I'm looking at the the Great Lakes. Like, the internal and the external were way out of sync for me at that point, and that's because I failed myself, right? I didn't speak up, I didn't stand up when I could have, and that's the challenge for me. And it may be a family disease, the like shoulda, woulda, coulda thing, right? So I was just fighting that dragon within, and then I realized that dragon is me. There is no one else in there. Every version of a person in my mind that I'm doing any kind of battle with, there's a part of my mind. It's just in me. I'm not beating them in the world. I'm not telling them anything. I'm not showing or changing anything. I'm just fighting with myself.
That is amazing. I remember in 8th grade going to this conflict resolution conference, and they gave us this slide that basically said attitude is 10% what happens to you, 90% of what you do with it. And when I'm listening to your story, by the way, as a Enneagram, I'm a 7 on there, which we're going to talk a little bit about. But I look at that as going, you might have actually made the greatest down payment of your life by doing that without even knowing it. And I just think that is absolute. Um, you know what? I know when you and I have talked in the past, talking about like reinvention, this wasn't a reinvention. This was a hard restart.
Yeah. There's like when a caterpillar goes into a cocoon, it completely dissolves. It like just turns into goo. There's nothing caterpillar about it anymore. Yeah. So when that thing is in there, it completely just dissolves, and it has these things called,
Jellifies.
yeah, they're called imago cells, which is like the image of the butterfly in this goo, and then it reforms itself into a completely different creature, right? A butterfly doesn't remember, it has no caterpillarness about it, right? And a caterpillar can't imagine flying. But to enter a transition phase and dissolve everything that it knows about life and the world and everything allows it to emerge in a completely different state. And that, I feel like, every time we suffer a loss or we put ourselves in a position to shift our identity in a fundamental way, we're kind of entering that zone. We're entering that glop phase, the zone of uncertainty and possibility as well.
That is fascinating. That is absolutely fascinating. And you and I have like some similarities of going through like some hard things. And you brought up the word, you were going through a grief cycle of grief cycle, and honestly like a probably a little bit of feeling bad for yourself about yourself, and but there's a grief of the death of who you thought you were, and the reality of the J curve of who you thought you were becoming. And then that's the cocoon, and then there was the butterfly that came out right afterwards in the actual reality. But I love if you talk a little bit about how, because I think of things that like you can voluntarily go for, that you put yourself in a cocoon, right? You're like, you know what, I'm doing this big challenge, and it's like you're going through something so hard that it's just like you have to become the image. Like, what was the name of that cell? Imago cell. Like, you have to be the imago cell of the butterfly that, like, you have to be. And then there are the things that happen in your life that, quite frankly, you have zero control of. And and as you and I have shared before, like my story is with Benny. Right? I was not expecting it, and but that is totally what happened. It was like I literally put my life as there's before Benny and after Benny, and there's like it is a clear line of demarcation. It's not like there's a caterpillar, and then in that time period, it was like I was a mago cells. And then there's in terms of what's happened like afterwards. And you've had some of like you've had some Imago Cell things, not just about like, the hard restart of from a creative brand agency. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your own version with grief?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have two siblings. My younger sister, Caitlin, is a couple of years younger than me, and then my youngest brother, Nolan. And we're each about 2 years apart. And I'm 43 now. And when I was 41, my brother was 35. He passed away unexpectedly. He got sick. He was kind of wrapped himself up in wool blankets, maybe dehydrated or too hot or something. But he just passed away overnight, and it was a total shock, and just like a complete, it was like a world breaking experience, and that pushed through, broke, destroyed some ability that I had to block my access to emotions. I grew up not really giving myself a chance to feel sadness or anger, or certainly to express either one of those things. And after Nolan died, that wasn't a choice anymore. And the the overwhelming grief, which I now understand is part of love, um, really shaped me. My brother gave me a copy of the book The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Are you familiar with that?
I am. I am.
Yeah, yeah. I never opened it. He gave it to me probably 5 years before he died, and once he passed, I couldn't really sleep very well. And in those times between 1 and 3 in the morning, I was like, I'll just read this book, and that was one of the most comforting things ever. I mean, there's so much about how joy and sorrow are essentially one thing. Like if you're feeling one, the other is close by. Um, and there was a kind of a metaphor in there that was like, um, the piece of wood that's being hollowed out isn't aware that it's being hollowed out for the breath of God to become a flute to make music. And these kind of experiences are that in some way. We're being hollowed out. Something that we thought was uh, a part of us is no longer there, and it's replaced by something else, something closer to the heart. Or it, I can't remember who said it. Maybe Rumi. The wound is where the light enters you. Something like that. Like, yeah, these experiences shape us, um, without our permission, but with our participation, right? Yeah. What you went through, just an unimaginable experience, losing your son. What came forward for you, or what was shaped in you that you couldn't have seen coming?
I think the thing that surprised me most was the amount of gratitude. I honestly thought in the beginning, when he kind of leading up, we knew he had a large VSD even before he was born. And we knew that, okay, but like Shaun White, like 8-time Olympic gold medalist, like had a large VSD. So we're like, okay, like this is like, it's something, but it's not, it's, we didn't necessarily know, but there's these narratives that go on in your head. It's like you hope for the best, and that internally you're going, whether you know it or not, you're preparing. Like you're just preparing, and you don't even realize you're preparing. And when it became clear that it just was that this is what the route, you talk about that grief and joy are the same thing. I remember in the hospital, I found myself ruminating over like words. Like one of them was like when the doctor had said, what do you want to do? We can keep him alive. And I remember just going, man, it was literally like the whole world slowed down. And I was like, what an interesting word. It was alive, really living. And then, but the other part that it really struck me was the word bittersweet. Like we've always said it. It's just, it's bittersweet, just bittersweet. But bittersweet is in essence like the human word for joy, grief. Like really grief, joy, like bitter and sweet, which is like you go, well, how do you have those things in the same thing? But the thing that I think that I left with was intense amounts of gratitude and awareness that I had been treading water, that I thought that I had been being successful. I thought that I had been being present. I thought that I had been being alive. And intense gratitude to my son for laying out that in his 16 days, he basically showed me the roadmap that I had in fact actually been playing it safe.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that is proof right there that the length of one's life does not determine the impact.
Yeah. Well, Shaun, I appreciate you saying that because a lot of times when I say like Benny lived more in 16 days than I had in like 42 years. It is the hardest thing to like I think for someone to like understand. But like being in the room and just being with him, he had like this incredible amounts of wisdom. I had a friend who's named Reagan, who's part of our board on 16 Days, our charity that we created for Benny. And I remember because I started writing, which interestingly enough, Shaun, like we have these identities, right? We think, that we're not. I've told myself for like years because I hadn't been a really great, quote unquote, conventional student, that I was a horrible writer. I was not a good writer. And then I found that as we were there, I was like, you know what? We're not the only people here that are like worried, that are concerned, that want to know, that are loving up on us, wanting to know about like another addition to this, to this tribe, this community. So I started like writing, and I think that was one of the gifts that I was given. Was number one, I found that I loved it. Second, I found that people were deeply impacted by it. But my friend Reagan said, he's like, I haven't even met Benny, but I feel like he has given me clarity and wisdom that I've been seeking. And I'm going, this is a guy, we're in Wisconsin. This is a guy who lives in Utah. And and so I think that's the thing that I found. And I think that's what surprised me most was I thought that I envisioned this movie in my head of me sitting in a fetal position in the corner for like months. I mean, if I'm being frank, that's what I envisioned, and that's not what happened.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? We're often, like you said at one point, you were trying to prepare yourself for something. These kinds of things you cannot prepare for. There is absolutely no way to predict what you're going to think, how you're going to feel, what you're going to do about it. You just can't know. But but the mind wants to control, and it will try to predict and project some expectation. But you know, rock bottom is actually a pretty firm foundation to build from. It turns out when your choices are limited, they're very easy to make.
that, that is so true. What from when we think is a like where we're at right now? No, like that rock bottom. You understand? There's just one way.
Yeah, exactly. But you spend your whole life fearing it, right? Like there were times in my business ownership journey where, we had whatever, a few $100,000 of personally secured debt. Clients cancel a project. All of a sudden, we are going from the black to way red. Like things are super not good, And as long as you stay on the field and keep playing the game, you don't lose. You have a chance to win. But those moments were like, oh no, what if this happens? And then it happened, and it's like, oh, very easy. Decide what to do. Do I want to do that or that? Which one can I sleep better at night with? Well, that is the only one, so that's what we're gonna do. And then you work your way back, and things keep cruising and turn out okay. And it's like, wow, I was for years just so worried about this thing happening. It finally happened. Totally surprised by how I felt, what I thought, what I did. Even like I have a lifelong fear of sharks, right? Who doesn't? They got thousands of rows of teeth. It's terrifying. Yeah. I went to Australia in 2014. We got to go do like snorkeling and scuba diving, the Great Barrier Reef. I jump into the water, the bubble's clear. The first thing I see is a shark. I'm not scared at all. I'm curious. I find myself following it over a big ocean cliff and looking for more of them. Like, well, maybe that wasn't the smartest thing to do, but it sure was a surprising response for feeling like, oh, I'm the most scared of this thing. I really hope I don't see it. Oh my God, there it is. Wow. Look at that. That's beautiful. Huh. Didn't think I would feel like that.
Wow. What do you think the difference was? Like you hopped in and it was just because you realized the beauty of it, you just submitted to it, like you surrendered to the fact of like, okay, like I'm in, like what was it about that? Because I think that that's a pretty common thing. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the actual experience being totally replacing whatever the mind could simulate, right? It's kind of like if your brain has like a dial-up connection to reality, your body has full on broadband. You know, you've got every sense operating together at once, and you can't predict with all those senses in the same way. So, in a way, it's made me feel like, you know what? I'm just gonna trust in life. It's way more creative than I could ever be. I'm just gonna relax and be a leaf on the river and go where it's going, because whenever I've allowed myself to feel into the direction of my inner compass and use this guidance system to align myself with something greater than myself, things tend to fall into place perfectly. And that would be like that, jumping in that water and letting those bubbles clear, or being in a situation with a business that I didn't want to be in, or whatever. All of those um, are. It's ultimately surprising. It's a revelation. It's a relief to realize that not only could I not predict how it was going to feel, um, I was surprised by a whole set of resources that I didn't know that I had.
yeah, yeah. Oftentimes when I'm talking with entrepreneurs, you don't know how good your team is until you actually create the space for them to have to actually save you versus you save them. And I think that that is I'm using that as example, but to what you just said is that it's really tough to know what you're made of until you actually have the ability to actually prove to yourself like what are the resources you actually are bringing. Which 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 brings me to the question here, Shaun, of this what call it restart, reinvention. I think we talk about it and people go, "Yep, oh they reinvented themselves," and everyone loves a good reinvention story. But I feel like it's not something that people actively search for. Like they don't go, "Oh, you know what I'm doing this year? You know what my misogi is? You know what my like rock this year? You know what my goal this year is? I'm going to look for the 5 things that I can like literally burn to the ground and rise from the ashes and rebuild back better." Like so why is it so hard and why do people avoid it? And if it does come visit your door, whether it's sort of like it's life is dropping the invoice to you, right? Like, what are the skills that you have noticed? I mean, because you've been in a lot of different organizations, you've lived it. So it's not something like, oh, here, do as I teach, right? You've actually lived it. And not only that, you've also coached it. But like, what are the skills that you need to weather that and or turn that in and transform it into instead of a transaction that happened to you, it's a transformation for you.
Yeah, yeah, wow, that's a great way to put it. I think if you look out in the world for advice, there's all kinds of motivational, productivity oriented things, right? It turns out the problem usually isn't motivation or skill. It's an ability to accept reality as it is, or yourself as you are, myself as I am. Um, so there's a lot of like acceptance is a powerful action. Like there are things that you can't do anything about. Like when my brother died, I was like doing talk therapy, group therapy, ayahuasca, ketamine, like everything I could think of to do to try and get rid of the grief right? But I was trying to do something about something that only acceptance can do. Once I just let go and sat with what was going on in me, it was able to shift on its own from just sorrow into joy, from just regret to gratitude, right? To see that there is a dynamic system going on here. And if we only prioritize success and we only celebrate success, we don't acknowledge that it's only the last step of the journey that completes it. But every other step is totally vitally important to the whole thing. We're missing the ability to transform because we're putting success in the future. For me, being where you are, with who you're with, doing what you're doing is success. If we can show up in the moment, accept ourselves as we are, look at what there is in front of us and work with it as it is, we're able to respond to reality appropriately. To some extent, if we're going to try to do something great, we need a little bit of delusion, right? We got to go, yeah, I'm going to change the world in this way, and we can become an unstoppable force. But it really does matter the way that we travel to a destination, right? The ends and means are one thing. So for me, it matters how I show up, how I'm showing up within myself, for myself, and it matters that I'm able to really see what's going on and to respond to it and accept the things that I don't like and don't want, and then include them, integrate them into the situation or into my understanding of myself or my appropriate response to whatever it is I'm working with or trying to accomplish. So the like typical, run faster, hit harder, work harder solution to the problem of success is in some ways helpful, but I think it's missing the fundamental starting point of determining success for oneself. Like, what is it? Who is it that I want to become so that I can be worthy of this goal or so that I can achieve this thing? I've got it in the book here, a quote from Earl Nightingale: "Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal." And that speaks to the process, right? The progressive realization of something. Because when you achieve something, when you cross a finish line, man, that's just one moment in time. And guess where the mind is going? Straight ahead to the next goal. You can barely celebrate any wins. And that's no way to live, right? Yeah, life's happening all the time in between. So it matters how we travel. It matters how we show up. And the frame that we give ourselves to do that to play the game the whole time is more important to me than just, showing up when the motivation is there or whatever.
I love your analogy. How we travel matters. Because I think we so often, it's A to B, end all be all. And the reality of it is being at A and getting to B, when you look at the amount of time that you spend at A and the amount of time you spend truly at B before you, I mean, like you said, the success happens, you hit B and you're already thinking about C, right? So it's so fleeting. And so how you travel, that's brilliant.
For a lot of us, this idea comes from Buddhism. We travel across an ocean. That's A to B. Then we take the boat with us from B to C up the mountain. We carry that thing up the mountain with us, even though it's useless. There's no water around. You're only on land. So, like, how can we leave behind what doesn't belong on the journey and give ourselves a chance to respond to what's in front of us exclusively? How many times do we carry baggage that just isn't useful to our journey,
Oh, I have to imagine pretty much every journey that we take, especially as we age, we start adding more things to our backpack. I look at my 4.5-year-old daughter. I got to tell you what, she's not carrying anything with her or very few things with her, except for, can she stay up 5 minutes later, and or she didn't get to play she get to play with like this one specific, toy, right? Like those that's in her baggage. And when I think about, you know, people, friends, family, like who are going up the mountain and some of the stuff they carry is just not serving their current travel arrangement.
Hmm. Yeah. When when I sold home, clothes, furniture, everything to travel. All that was going with me was in the truck and trailer. As soon as all that stuff was gone, I felt physically lighter. My mind felt like a defragmented hard drive. Like there was just room in there that was previously occupied by stuff, physical objects. I had no idea that that would shift my experience until I experienced it. Same thing, like I'm terrified of sharks until I see a shark, then I'm very curious. We can only really know something by experiencing it. That was another thing that came up in the process of kind of unwinding through all those travels is life answers all questions with experience. I think a lot of the time we're listening for like a set of English words that will untie a knot in our brain and make everything make sense, but that's just not how it works, man.
No, it isn't. That really isn't. You're totally right. You're totally right. It's um I think so often people will go to prayer, or it's meditations or affirmations, or it's mantras, right? Which all of these things are just at the end of the day, you know, having a conversation with yourself and like whoever for you, whether it's God, universe. Um, and I'm really curious of how intuition has played into this, right? Because there's this, like what you say, what experiences that life gives you, and then there's this thing that's like it's like umami. You can't really like, right? It's like in food, right? You can't really like name it, right? It's like sweet, sour, bitter, salty, right? Like these are the senses we really can. But then there's this thing, but like it's savory. Like what? Well, what is it? Like I don't know. It's kind of this, but it's like they call it umami, and I feel like intuition is like umami.
That's an incredible way to put it. I've never heard that analogy before. Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, it's like we all know what it is. For me, I feel it in my gut, like almost literally where my stomach is, right? There's just a sense of a situation of people, of tension in a room, whatever it is, I feel it there. When I hit that point with my business, that's where I felt the like arrow of truth being like, no, this is not, we got to change something here, you know? Is that something you're familiar with as well?
Oh yeah. It's funny that you say because it is. It's interesting that it's in the gut. Like we think that all thinking happens here, right? And there's a lot of now science that comes out. There's actually a whole other brain down in your like your there's actually like I think the other two brains, right? There's the brain of your bacteria that's kind of in your micro in atmosphere, and then there's like in your gut. But it's interesting to me, but people say I had a gut feeling intuition, but that's always like happening here. But that's how it is for me. You just go, I can't put my finger on it, but as soon as you said like I feel it in my gut, I'm like, oh, I know that feeling.
Yeah. And how many times have you known something in your gut? It doesn't speak in English. It's just a feeling, right? Ignored it, and then the thing you regret is having ignored that feeling. Yeah. Like I think that's important, man. Like to to start to tune in, to pay attention and literally allow your attention to exist inside your body, not on a screen, not just in your thinking patterns, but to tap into the data that's coming from something other than just thinking in whatever language it is you think in. And letting that, it's like a quiet sense. It's like more like reading the magnetic field or whatever than running a logic tree. But that, to me, it's like it takes a lot of thinking to arrive at what the heart already knows. We can think our way into or out of something, but there's just nothing to be done about that gut feeling. It's saying what it's saying for a reason, and it's coming from a set of intelligence that is beyond comprehension.
Yeah. I like that you go, the heart already knows, because hypothetically, the heart, for all we know, right, does not necessarily have, it's a muscle. But again, so is the brain. But I find that so interesting that we know truths, but our brain refuses to accept it. And you had talked about, we just have to have acceptance. And interestingly enough, if you ever watch National Geographic or any like animal thing, when you see, like especially in Africa, when there's a chase that happens, there is an acceptance that happens. You see it. It's not like the animal, once it's down, it might try to kick a little bit, and then it just, there's just an acceptance of it. And just to be clear, I'm not suggesting that you don't fight the fight, but I think it's about, what is the fight going towards? Is the, like in this case, is the fight to to protect and to save this external narrative? Is the fight to protect your ego from realizing that maybe it's gone amok? Like I'm curious, when you think about this acceptance and that, and your experience with it, in this idea of practicing intuition, grief. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, so a fundamental element of sort of the physics of practice, I guess, is resistance. There is very little resistance in the way of disintegrating your body, mind, and character. There's all kinds of junk food. It tastes great. It's easy to get access to, and it will destroy you over time. Right? You can do the same thing with information, junk information, gossip, all this. Really easily accessible. Really not. It's like harmful. The arrow of time will bend your experience in a downward trajectory. So resistance, for whatever reason, is the thing that strengthens us, right? You go to the gym, you do resistance training, you break down the muscle, it builds back stronger. Same thing with the mind, and maybe even with the heart. But whatever we are facing, I always think of the formula is resistance is equivalent to your strength minus one. So you could always defeat it, but you won't always. It's very powerful because you're very powerful. Whatever you're trying to do, you're going to face just the exactly appropriate amount of resistance to that thing. And normally, just getting started is the very hardest part with anything. With grief, it's getting started, allowing myself to feel my feelings. Okay, I don't want to feel that. I'm going to go do this instead. I'm going to go take a walk, or I'm going to play chess on my phone or whatever. And then I go, okay, I'm going to stop resisting this. I'm going to experience it and allow it to shift and change on its own. With something like, weight training, I'm going to lead into it. I'm going to push into this resistance. I'm going to force myself to do a difficult thing so that I can do even more difficult things. So I can become more capable and expand my capacity. So seeing that there are some things where outer action is the answer, and some things where inner action is the answer. We can only discover which one is correct by sitting still long enough to feel for that answer. There's some things that are obvious, of course, but then we are building our identity through our action, right? Writers write, painters paint, runners run. You don't think of yourself as a writer until you start writing, and then you're a writer. Yeah. So we get ourselves moving one step at a time, and then we start to build momentum, and then we start to identify with ourselves as, I am the kind of person who does whatever. I wake up at 6, I wake up at 5. I get up early because I want to create time and space for myself to meditate, to write, to get in touch with my own priorities and remember my definition of success so someone else doesn't replace it with theirs.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I've always been a big fan of, if you don't have clarity, someone will inject theirs.
Yeah.
And but that's, it's so true though, Shaun. when you talk about effort and energy, because quite frankly, you think about like thinking, right? Or just even doing any things we're talking about, nothing that we're talking about is overtly difficult. Like if you just go, hey, spend some time, think about your thinking. That's not a difficult request, but the actually doing of it is actually hard. And you said, starting is often the hardest part. When they launch a rocket into space, 85% of the fuel was used like to get to the moon. 85% of the fuel was used just to leave the atmosphere.
Yeah. Because that's where all the resistance is, right?
Yeah, and I think that that is the same thing that happens in our brains. From the orbit in the earth that is our existing status of being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how does that show up for you in your life, Ben?
Hmm. Man, you're good at asking these questions. It's like you had done 100 podcasts or something, John.
Something like that.
Something like that. I think I think that before Benny, I had a really strong gravitational pull. And I would say that I was a committed slow learner. and and I think that since then, I have opened up my gravitational pull because what I've seen is the beauty of when you have zero gravity. And zero gravity is, I think that when you had said before, I think to be free is to feel, to be, and to exist and experience. And what I find is even to this day, I'll hear anytime I hear "My Way" by Frank Sinatra, because Benny was born on Frank Sinatra's birthday, and we both had this realization that Benny really lived like that song, like it was his way, and like I'll be in a Starbucks and I'll hear that, and previous me, I would have been like orbital, like rocket, you are not my grief rocket, you are not launching, you do not have clearance to launch, and now I'm very much more of a I can see it coming. I can see the wave coming. I can see it like knowing, and I just know. And used to before, I would maybe feel judgment and shame around that, this resistance to do it. And I find that when these waves hit my shores, it's sort of like if you've ever been to a lake and it's completely still, like it's glass. And and then there's just a random sort of like ripple that comes through and you can see it coming, and there's a level of like beauty in it, and I find that I think that that's where a lot of where I am like now, but there is, and it's really freeing to just allow things to happen, and and I think Shaun, go ahead. Yeah. And I think when you've done the hard things, like, and again, I know that I talk a lot about this, like on my podcasts, but the the having to make the decision of when to pull the breathing tube, it's still to this day, I just go, until I have to do something that hard ever again, everything seems pretty reasonable in comparison. Right? Like, so when you have something, I think so that gravitational pull, I think was broke 3 because I'm just going, well, if I can have the courage and love to do that,
Mhm.
I don't know.
It gives you a context for what is really difficult or important, right? Yeah. And also just the beauty of this fleeting existence. We're floating around in space on a rock orbiting a ball of flames, whipping through infinity. None of it makes any sense, but we watch the graph go up and down. We get mad about the news, whatever. All those things, when you really touch into something, like you said, bittersweet. It's like heartbreaking, but something that broke your heart open and gave you access to a life force that was previously muted in some way. It changes everything. And you're breaking the context, the construct of like what is possible in masculinity, right? You're a man, you're not allowed to cry. Real men don't cry. But when you are in touch with your feelings, you are a more powerful force than you could ever be without access to that source of vitality.
Oh, that is so true. So if it's an energy game, and think about though, like what is one of the most powerful sources of energy that as humans we've created?
Oh, you mean like a nuclear force or something?
Yeah, nuclear force, right? It's a splitting of atoms, right? And so you just hit me with that, Sean, like in such a beautiful way is that what grief is, it's the splitting. When you feel it's the splitting of something, and that's the beauty is that what do you do with that energy? Do you bottle it up? Well, then it becomes toxic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. All tension is a form of potential energy, right? That whenever that happens, some tension is created. We often, or my pattern has been to absorb that tension and mute it, push it down, and just be like, nope, all good here, no problem. But we can do something. It was like if you stretch a rubber band, there's so much tension, right? There's potential energy there. My tendency has been to be the one who just collapses that tension, move toward the other person or whatever. But you can also lean toward it, increase it, allow someone else to shift, something else to change in the world, right? The tension that we feel comes from interacting with the world in some way. Taking action inevitably leads to conflict and tension. And so to be able to feel that, we're going to feel it in our bodies. I mean, our minds will show it too. They'll start to overwork and try to predict and control. But that is another one of those moments where you can cue your attention to go, oh, okay, I need to do something with this energy on purpose, or it's just going to do something with me.
That I love that, and I think that it gives, at least to me, and I don't know if to our audience, to me, a construct or a structure to really understand is that when you say practice everything, is really what you're saying. Because I think we can go practice, okay, like we practice, our letters, we practice writing, we practice piano, we practice all these different things. But what I'm really taking from this is that practices really create tension and to crack it open.
Yeah. If everything is practice, you allow yourself to operate within a frame that says you're everything is happening for your good, for your benefit, and for your growth. Whether it's a, like you say, like a invoice that came your way from life, or a variable you introduced on purpose on your own, it exists within that field. And for me, all practice is progress. Anything that you're doing with intention, with presence, is progressing you toward ultimately becoming the kind of person you want to be, but probably achieving some goals along the way. And making that progress brings success into this moment, not some faraway future finish line, but success in the act of practicing itself. If you want to play guitar every day, set your goal at one chord per day, the very bare minimum. Then you do that thing every day. You have guitar as a part of your life every day. You're making the smallest increment of progress. But success and practice and progress all happen in this moment now. There's only this moment. So allowing ourselves to exist in this space with a presence of mind that gives us the room to make mistakes and try things and feel things that we're unfamiliar with and learn from all of it, I think is just a gift we can offer to ourselves and the world at the same time.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is a gift, and it's the ultimate gift that we can like give ourselves. Especially as we're recording this, we're coming up on after Thanksgiving in quite frankly, I think the biggest giving like season. And so often we're looking at what can we buy, and you just imagine if everyone gave themselves and one other person the gift of presence, the gift of practice on one thing. I mean, if we ran it like a business, like yourself as a business, and we started looking at how do we go from a all right business to best in class, you would literally look at these things in quarterly goals, right? You would set like, what are the projects? If you're EOS language, you understand when I say a rock, right? What are the rocks, right? Not the pebbles, not the little rocks, the stones, but like what are the biggest rocks that you can do in the practice? Um, um, and I got to tell you, if you're not picking up Shaun's book, Practice Everything, I think you're not going to have. I think it's going to be a harder road. That quite frankly, someone who's already had a lot of practice at actually breaking atoms open. So, um, Shaun, I want to talk a little bit about this is an energy game, right? We have the past, present, and future, right? And they all are separate, but at the same time are sort of like Neapolitan ice cream left on the counter, right? They're like you can clearly see different colors, but boy, you're like, whoa, it's sort of melted a little bit. Okay, is this past? Is this present? Or is this past and future? Is this like what is this? Um, One of the things you had talked before was about Enneagram, and I would love if we could dive into that because I think this is something that is practical and tangible for people to be able to do, be around, and start to actually build some actual systematic, structured practice of who they are, who they've been, and who they're becoming in a way that allows their brain to start to quantify. So could you first explain what is Enneagram? Because as I've gone through and I ask people, have you heard Enneagram? They're like, no. And there's different assessments out there right now, like print that are based off of like, there's something called print that is like, it's derived, like inspired from Enneagram, but it's not Enneagram. But can you explain what it is? What's the history around it? Um, and why is it so damn effective?
Great questions. For sure. So first I'll say the Enneagram is like a personality system that helps you understand what are your motivations and fears and the strengths and challenges that arise from that particular strategy for approaching the world. It's got kind of a mysterious past. It comes from different lines of mysticism, and then it was taken over. It kind of worked on, they think of it as something that's discovered more than created. Discovered by looking at human beings and figuring out how are we showing up dynamically in relationship with each other and with ourselves. So the Ennea is the Greek word for 9. Gram is like a diagram or a drawing. So Enneagram, if you see the symbol or look it up, it's a 9-pointed circle that shows how each of these styles relate to the world, how they shift in stress, how they shift in growth. So like we were saying earlier, it's easier to disintegrate than it is to integrate. And so there are lines of disintegration or integration or growth and stress. So it shows us how we connect to 2 other styles that we might shift into when we're stressed or shift into when we're very present. So I'll just do a quick tour of the 9 types. Starting with 1. 1 is like the perfectionist or the reformer or the improver. This is the person who thinks in terms of good and bad, black and white, right and wrong, and they want to be good and right. And they have a really strong internal compass, great ethical standards, and sort of an internal critic that's like watching their thoughts and words and actions and comparing them all to that internal standard. So that's like a caricature of type 1. Type 2 is the helper or the giver. This is the person who's very heart-centered. They're super excellent at predicting, seeing, and meeting the needs of others around them, but they may not be so great at understanding when their needs are going unmet or communicating that they need help with something. Classic situation where they'll overgive and then kind of get, realize they're pouring from an empty cup and get stressed out. It's very hard to say no, very hard to ask for help. So they're kind of like these built-in, these are strengths, these are also challenges. The type 3 is like the performer, the achiever. This is the person who's very goal-oriented. They're excellent at setting and accomplishing goals, but they also tie their self-worth to their accomplishments. So I'm only good if I'm achieving, and I'm only as good as my achievements. They're really like the chameleon of the Enneagram. They can they know how to appear appropriate in many different situations, which can make them feel a little bit less authentic to themselves, although each of those versions of them is an authentic expression. The type 4 is like the romantic or the intense creative. It's the person who identifies with their emotions in the moment, and they feel more drawn to kind of like the melancholy, the darker side of the emotional spectrum as a source of authenticity, truth, unique creative expression. They want to be individual and to study themselves in a way that brings forward some unique creative gift to the world. It's usually music, art, poetry, writing in some way, books, films, this kind of thing. Tend to be like the classic artist style. Type 5 is like the observer, the investigator, a very heady type person who sees the world in abstract terms. They build mental models for things, but they can kind of forget, like, the map is not the territory. You can't eat the recipe to taste the meal. At some point, you got to go out into the world, and interact with it. But although they're constantly absorbing all knowledge of all kinds, that's their response to fear. Is like, if I know enough, then I won't have to deal with fear because I can engineer the uncertainty out of a situation, which of course is impossible. um, the type 6 is the loyal skeptic. This is the person who is very they're like the glue of our society. They're great friends. They're super responsible. They're excellent troubleshooters, really creative. They're also incredible at instantly figuring out how something could go wrong. So they tend to think in worst case scenarios and planning for the worst case scenario, being prepared for anything, and kind of dealing with a constant undercurrent of doubt. So they're highly creative, they're highly adaptable, and they're also highly concerned that something might go wrong. And they have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G for all that. So, okay, 3 more types here. So type 7, which is the one that you said you resonate with, that's like the enthusiast, the epicure, the person who will try anything twice, once to try it, second time to see if they liked it the first time. Like, they really want to feel the fullness and joy and expansiveness of life. They just load it up with experiences. They've got a bucket of silver paint to paint the linings around everything and make it all good and live in the dream kind of thing. But it can be very difficult to stop projecting into the future where things are definitely great, and sit in the present where they might not be so great, and slow down and feel difficult feelings and move through those without trying to get ahead to the next thing, next opportunity, next idea, because that's where the energy comes from, is like a real clear vision of a positive future. Anything from there standing out to you just in your own experience?
Yeah, I think it's totally true. And I think you're gonna talk about like how people can use this, but the thing I love about Enneagram the most is how you find your discovery of yourself. At least my experience with it is it's not in like oh, here's the wonderful, great thing about whatever that is. It's actually in the reading of the things that, like, if you want to call them basements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it hits you where it hurts for sure.
Yeah, it hits you where it hurts. And the thing that for me, for a lot of people it takes a long time, but anywhere from like 2 months to, honestly, like potentially 2 years until you have acceptance of it. And but once I had the language around it, it allowed me to actually be and actually know that about myself, that like I may not stop. And that's one of the things that, like, with Benny, was that I was super cognizant of knowing that, like, hey, everything in life from a standpoint I see is a possibility. And I was like, but this is not a possibility. This is a reality. And if I'm careful, I'm going to cause detrimental harm to myself at a minimum. And there's a huge potential that I'm going to cause damage to others.
Mm-hmm. You mean by running your standard program of like, it's all good and here's why, and we're all moving forward, and yeah, yeah.
And that if I didn't create space, I was going to create distance between Jen and I, because Jenna is not me. Other people aren't me, and that I need to leave room, number one, for myself, and create and leave runway for my plane to land on. And but not only that, but also not expect other people's planes to be able to land on the same length of runway as me. But I think without the Enneagram, I don't have that awareness to be able to do it. So that was really stuck out to me. But so
Yeah, definitely. For me, it was like, we'll cover the last two types in a second here, but the um, the feeling of, it was like growing up in a dark room with a flashlight. Like I've found all the furniture, I'd run into everything, I've seen it all. The Enneagram just turned on the light, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's all right there. I've been dealing with all these challenges and strengths this whole time. But it gave me a way. It was like a beautiful mirror. It was a way to accept the things that are difficult and challenging without making them too personal to me, actually, right? I'm reading something in a PDF. That's a PDF. I'm a person. What a relief. These patterns are well understood by others. It's not just me being this messed up on my own. So yeah, you're right. Like it does help you to see a lot of great things about your personality style, but also to see the things and have some, especially in a group setting or in relationships, have some shared language to understand each other without making it so personal. And once you have, especially in relationships, is where it really shines. You can see, oh, I'm this type. I'm coming from this position. Their type coming from that position. Both are totally valid. We just have different motivations here, and so we can come to understand that and work together a little better.
yeah. Well, I know I want you to go through the other types because there are other aspects that I think that are super important about this because it's not just where you are now. And I know you're going to get in some of that like history of it. So, do you want to go through the other two types? And I don't want to spoil the.
Oh yeah, no, it's all good. So the last two here, we've got type 8, which is the protector or challenger, it's almost like the warrior class. They are willing to and actually seek out conflict as a way of determining what's true. They really have no problem with conflict at all. And most people are not that way. So it can be difficult to interact with an 8 unless you understand, oh, they're not trying to be difficult. They just want to understand something and they're going straight at it. So the 8 is like concerned with justice and truth, and they have a ton of energy. They're really like in their bodies, and they feel anger and let it come out. They actually don't hold on to it at all. They use it as a source of energy, and so they are not like holding grudges or anything like that. They're communicating what needs to be said pretty much all the time, whether you like it or not. Yeah. And then the final type 9, is the peacemaker, the harmonizer, the mediator, the person who wants to be connected to life, the universe, and everything, and feel and be at peace. They're really good at seeing multiple perspectives at once and seeing a path toward harmony, but they're really bad at including themselves in that equation and being willing to speak up for themselves or advocate for themselves. So it's the classic, like, cobbler with no shoes situation. They can help resolve any conflict as long as it doesn't involve them. And they need to learn conflict is the path to true harmony. You have to invest and engage in the world in order to participate honestly in relationships.
Which is the one that you resonate with?
I'm definitely type 9. Like I've got a strong perfectionistic side to me, the little one wing there. But man, when I read all the types, I was like, oh, type 2, helpful, generous. I like that. Type 7, optimistic. Cool. That sounds like me. And then I read type 9. I was like, oh, damn it. I hate that I can be a doormat and just let people walk all over me and go along to get along and go with the flow. And these are things that maybe seem nice to someone else, but that it just hit like, oh man, all the hurt parts in me. And I was like, oh man, damn it, I'm a 9.
Yeah. And for the audience, there's a bunch of different Enneagram sites, and I don't know if you have one that you recommend over another, but you do take like a test, so to speak, and it gets graded and they give you points for them. And this is the reason why I love Enneagram, pretty much for an actual who you are and who you are being and are becoming sort of baseline, is because it's not the highest score. You don't just get to like not be, you don't get to be mindless and just go, oh, high score, I must be this. And then the other part I love that you actually just said, Shaun, that I think is so great about is it is an interesting journey of what you would like to be, what you'd like to be known as. So that's actually an interesting in its journey. I mean, you said, "Oh man, I'd like to be too." Interestingly enough, Beth, our chief innovation manager, she has done a lot of stuff in this. She said that a lot of women, specifically from like in the baby boom generation, want to be and identify as a two.
Yeah. And they often will, their score will be really high for two because that's what's expected as ideal.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit more about like, okay, what someone takes this, how are they supposed to like use this? Like, how would you recommend someone who's like going through this, they get done listening to this episode, they go take it, and now they're in the exploration. And more importantly, what is the why behind the Enneagram and how does this improve themselves and everything else?
Yeah, for sure. Great questions, Ben. So first of all, like you pointed out, tests are not, there's no test that's like 100% accurate. They'll get maybe 60, 70% of the way there. The goal is just to cut the 9 choices down to like 2 or 3 so that you can then sit with them, right? And go, okay, well, am I motivated by helping others, or am I motivated by keeping the peace, or am I motivated by knowing everything that I can, like, to feel less fearful, whatever it is. So to really sit with what is your internal experience, what is your motivation, and use exactly what you said, use the things that hit you where it hurts to guide you to the answer. Because yeah, sure, it would be nice if I was what I aspired to be and this type just happens to represent it well. But in reality, I'm dealing with something else and I have to look at that directly in order to understand, oh yeah, this is my home-based style. This is how I tend to be. And then the lines connect you to 2 other styles. So it's important to check with those as well. So I'm a 9. My growth line goes to 3. So that means if by default I'm going to go along to get along, and I kind of like to numb out and do things that are self-soothing to avoid resistance or conflict. When I start to build up momentum, I'm moving toward type 3. I'm stepping into my performer, my achiever. I'm setting and achieving goals that are meaningful to me. I'm starting to build up momentum. It's really hard to get going, but then once I'm going, it's hard to stop me. As a 9, when I experience stress, I drop into my mind, and my mind works like a type 6. It starts to think in worst case scenarios, what could go wrong, rumination, regret, kind of circling around the same things, but in a negative way, or with doubt and negative expectations. So it's important to see the whole picture and really go, yeah, is this, when I'm at my best, do I step into the growth style? When I'm not at my best, am I falling down into the stress point? So you can kind of see that whole picture there. And then once you have that, the practice is seeing those patterns for what they are. We could describe it like emotions or patterns that are above the line, which for me is free, creative, spontaneous flow. Below the line is static, repetitive, recycling by nature. All of the emotions that drive the structure of our personalities, that is why the Enneagram works in the first place, are inherently uncreative. They can only recycle and repeat. So once you see the patterns, you can't unsee them. It's like learning to read. You can't not do it, right? You see a word, your brain reads it automatically. So the gift of the Enneagram and the practice of it is all within awareness. It shows you without any confusion, with total clarity, what all these patterns are and the ways that they recycle on their own. And then you can see when they're operating and go, oh yeah, I'm doing the thing that I've always done. Do I want to get what I've always got, or do I want to try something else? It just gives us a chance to put a little gap between stimulus and response, between event and reaction, and then expand that enough to have a chosen response instead of just constantly reacting to everything all the time.
Yeah, you just hit on something. It's great to like anchor yourself into like the identity. And that's usually, I feel like it's like the like the stages of grief, right? It's sort of like, you recognize with it. But I think the thing that has been most valuable is that you said like in growth or stress, and I liken it to in my healthy or unhealthy self, to really to kind of like check myself. But as a 7, when I'm in my unhealthy self, I go to a 1. Like there's awesome parts of 1, by the way, but the unhealthy part of like a 1. And the thing is, I literally now, I can feel myself being sucked back into there because I find myself like I'm critical. I'm displaying perfectionist tendencies and being like, why isn't this done to like the perfect like T? And I can find myself getting like ramped up. I find myself being like incredibly critical. And it's giving myself the empathy and language to go, hold on. Not only that, but it's also given like language for like those like in my inner circle to be able to go, hey, like are you kind of maybe kind of going into the unhealthy side of this? And it's given like this really great permission to be able to go for myself to be like, you know what? Hold on. Like this is not an everyone else problem. This is 100% an accountability problem. This is a me problem. Doesn't mean that these things maybe aren't being doing well, but how I'm going about them is not in a way that is going to actually get the outcomes, both professionally and also in development of anyone else who's on the other side of me.
Yeah, for sure. And it gives you something to pay attention to. You can notice a shift within yourself and go, oh, I'm headed in the wrong direction here. What do I need to do to pause and reset?
Yeah. In that, I have to tell you, it may not sound like a ton, but I got to tell you, it is worth so much money. If you want to break it down, to have the ability to have that recognition. Um, so I think here in closing, what's the case for Enneagram if someone who's listening to this being like, Enneagram might be good for you if,
Well, if you want to understand yourself better, when I learned it, I instantly had the feeling like, oh, good, I don't need to go on a spirit quest anymore. I could just work with all the stuff that I see here. It's kind of liberating to just see, all right, this is the baseline software that's operating in me. The things that we pay attention to shift on their own. So if you want to grow as a person without having to do anything other than pay attention to yourself, pretty great starting point for real, exponential personal growth. And then I think it's just a great way to understand yourself, understand others from a much more compassionate position. Like it's way easier to hold a little bit of space for someone, for ourselves, to be a little kinder, when we're not taking things so personally or making them so personal. Most of the time, it's just personality, and we can go, oh, yep, see that, gonna pause, reset, and shift something.
come on, Shaun, I've loved having you on. And hey, people want to know more about you, right? Because there's so much more to the story. I mean, honestly, Shaun, we could go probably another 2 hours here, in terms of there's so much more to your story about like your life at head of development at Gooder, but there's a whole life that you've built beyond this, that you've packaged and accumulated all of this knowledge. But if people want to follow you, they want to like find out more about you. They want to get access to like your book, which again, if you're listening to this, it's called Practice Everything, The Art of Realizing Your Potential. I got to tell you, this is not a tomb. It's going to surprise you when you get it, but it is a book that you can literally pick up anytime and you will get immense value, even if you just open up one page. I mean, so huge shout out. I mean, Shaun, you've made it so easy for people to win with this book. I very much appreciate it. So, but again, where can they find you?
Well, online, Instagram or my website, Shaun Tinney. ShaunTinney.com is my website. Shaun Tinney is my handle. PracticeEverything.com for the book. Same thing on Instagram for that.
Yeah. And if people want to like engage you in any coaching or speaking or anything like that, where do they go to?
That's all through PracticeEverything.com.
Fantastic. Shaun, I've loved having you on. And I know in the green room, you had said you've listened to other podcasts. And so you know what's coming here at the end of a podcast is But I think it's so important that you get the last word, you get the last ripple, the last question, the call to action, the statement. What do you want our audience to ruminate about or take away with them?
If you're quiet and you really listen, what is something that you already know to be true that you're not yet doing something about? And what would it look like to do that thing?
Ending on such a strong note. Shaun, thank you for being here. Thanks just for, honestly, this has been the fastest, almost 2-hour conversation. It's been an absolute gift, and I'm very excited for our audience to hear it. Thanks for being here.
Heck yeah. Thank you for having me, Ben.
Thank you for listening. A big thanks to Elation Lab for the production and creative design. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Keep listening for more Max Life.